The name Rothschild has become synonymous with wealth, and the story of this money-making family started with a man called Meyer Amschel Rothschild. His beginnings were what you might call humble, since he lived in a Jewish ghetto in Frankfurt, Germany, sharing a house with another 30 people. Both his parents died from smallpox when he was just 12 years old, and prior to that, it was their wish that he become a rabbi. That didn't happen, and instead, at just age 13, the young Rothschild started an apprenticeship at a bank in Hanover. Through his teens, he practiced commodities and money trading, as well as sold rare coins. Through that, he rubbed shoulders with German nobility, and while he was working, he was also making children, 10 in all. Let's now see what happened next in this episode of the Infographic Show. How much money do the Rothschilds have? So we all know it started with Meyer Amschel Rothschild. In fact, this man is sometimes called the founding father of international finance. We know he had 10 kids, and 5 of those were sons. Each of these sons was responsible for running a finance house in Europe's centers of finance. This family or empire worked under the motto Unity, Integrity, Industry. We're also told that understanding all the ways this family earned its fortune is not exactly clear, with one journalist saying there is no book about them that is both revealing and accurate. Libraries of nonsense have been written about them. We do know that war made this family rich, with the Rothschild making hay during a time when the European sun shone on conflict after conflict. The family lent money to governments to finance war and also had a hand in many industries. Before Meyer Rothschild left planet Earth in 1812, he had thought up ways to keep all the money he and his sons had made by maintaining a close-knit family. According to an article in Discover magazine in 2003 called Go Ahead, Kiss Your Cousin, the plan was for cousins to marry cousins, thereby keeping the money in a close gene pool. That magazine tells us, for generations, the Rothschild family had been inbreeding almost intensively as European royalty. It also tells us 4 of Meyer's granddaughters married grandsons and 1 married her uncle. These were hardly people whose mate choice was limited by the distance they could walk on their day off. We're told that of Meyer's 5 sons, it was the 3rd that made the most cash. His name was Nathan Meyer Rothschild. Nathan made a lot of money funding infrastructure in Europe, and this was a Europe that was growing at hyperspeed because of the Industrial Revolution. He moved to the center of that revolution, England, in 1798. There he started a textile business and also began trading on the London Stock Exchange. Soon enough, he would have his own bank, and that was called N.M. Rothschild & Sons Limited. We're told that during the Napoleonic Wars, the bank pretty much financed Britain's entire war effort. But lending money to governments wasn't the only way of making huge amounts of money. Insurance was a game that the Rothschilds played. Nathan, along with a partner, founded the Alliance Assurance Company in 1824. The Rothschild archive tells us that this was a direct challenge to Lloyd's Bank. The family were busy, to say the least, buying up expensive tracts of land in London, helping Brazil gain its independence, financing massive projects such as the building of the Suez Canal, while also using its capital to help founding of some of the world's biggest companies. It also lent money to Japan so it could finance its side of the Russo-Japanese War. Nathan, now Lord Rothschild, had his finger in so many pies that he was sometimes called the most powerful man in Britain. It was Nathan who started the philanthropic activities of the Rothschilds. He had 7 kids of his own, each of whom either went into the business or spent much of their time with the charity side of the business. This included building schools, libraries, hospitals, orphanages, and places where the old could live their dying years in peace. But peace in the early 20th century was not exactly in the air. Investopedia tells us that there was infighting in the early 20th century, which was detrimental to the family wealth. We're told that during World War II, the family also lost many properties, while the Nazis stole millions of dollars worth of assets from the Rothschilds. Still, the family was never exactly broke. We're told that these days the family fortune is still considerable, and it still has its fingers in many, many pies, with finance, real estate, mining, and energy being some of the bigger pies. Some smaller businesses include things like owning wineries, of which the Rothschild owned quite a few on different sides of the world. The family is also the proud owner of one of the biggest art collections in the world, and the mind boggles as to how much that collection is worth. There are many descendants in this family, and the wealth stays with them. You can easily find a list of all these descendants, and you'll see that here are way too many people for us to discuss in detail. For that reason, adding up what the entire family is worth is no easy feat, but people have tried to do it. We might look at the Forbes Richest People list, which has a few Rothschilds on it. Coming in at 84 for 2018 was a man called Benjamin de Rothschild. It's said that he has a net worth of about $1.7 billion. That's enough not to stress about the electricity bill and his 3 kids' school fees. But in terms of billionaires, he's nothing special. But then Forbes tells us his job is to preside over the Edmund de Rothschild global finance empire, and that's said to manage assets of up to $170 billion, including banks, hotels, and restaurants. Benjamin also owns or part-owns vineyards in France, South Africa, Argentina, and New Zealand. And as we said, this is just one guy in a very big family. No one Rothschild family member has an obscene amount of wealth, but no one Rothschild is about to match the wealth of people such as Bill Gates or Warren Buffett. But when you add all those assets together, it does come to a lot of money. Searching for the magic number regarding the net worth of all the family, you'll find sources that differ drastically. We found one site that said the entire family fortune could be as much as $2 trillion, but the website Bankrate believes it's nowhere near that amount. It says the Rothschild family net worth is closer to $400 billion. And again, we must stress that there's a lot of mouths to feed in this large family. Bankrate tells us that one of the big money spinners is the Rothschild investment firm, which pulls in about $500 million a year. Then you have all the conspiracy theory sites, and they tell a totally different story. One such website tells us that the Rothschild had a hand in the assassination of American President John F. Kennedy, and that the family is worth an astounding $500 trillion. That particular site, one that seems to lack any kind of journalistic integrity, tells us that Jacob Rothschild is worth more than Bill Gates. This should be taken with a pinch of salt until someone can offer serious counter-evidence. Other resources tell us Jacob, the 82-year-old British investment banker, is worth like $5 billion, which pales in comparison to the Gates fortune. Let's see what those intrepid fact-finders over at Snopes tell us about the 500 trillion figure. Well, the first thing you can read in that story is that the Rothschild owning such wealth is false. It shows us an amusing meme of Jacob, who quite amusingly is made just to look like Mr. Burns from The Simpsons. Snopes tells us that the grossly exaggerated wealth that some people talk about is another conspiracy tied up with paranoid platitudes along the line of the Jews run the world and the Illuminati control everything. Snopes tells us that when the 500 trillion number was first disseminated through the sometimes dishonest heart of the internet, the world's wealth was reportedly only at 250 trillion. This, said Snopes, is problematic. It certainly is. It sounds like a children's math question. In the box there are 10 apples. Jane took 4, Peter took 2, Jacob took 20. How many apples are left? Snopes said that while many family members are indeed rich, the Rothschilds don't have anywhere near the global influence they used to have. So what are all these people worth? And we're talking about everything, all assets, businesses, etc. Investopedia published 2 stories about this, and each in turn was taken down with the website saying that the journalism was inadequately sourced. One story said the family's net worth was $350 billion, and another said the family controlled more than $2 trillion worth in assets. You can still see these numbers on other sites with links back to Investopedia. But as Investopedia wants nothing to do with these numbers, we would be better looking elsewhere. CNBC, you would think, would do its homework when adding up rich family wealth, but when it did, its list said it couldn't include families such as the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, because the wealth is just too diversified. Okay, we're getting nowhere here, and the reason is because no reliable journalistic sources have attempted to give us a number on this diversified wealth. If we look at the Forbes rich list again, Jacob Rothschild doesn't even get on the list with his purported $5 billion. We should add that it seems this number was first let loose by the website The Richest. But on the Forbes list, we have Benjamin, who we have already talked about, and also Jeff Rothschild, who is said to be worth about $2.2 billion right now. You could call this 63-year-old Silicon Valley resident a more modern kind of Rothschild, as he made a ton of money in tech, such as Facebook. But then it gets tricky, because his bio states he is not part of the Rothschild family. It seems not everyone agrees with that statement, but we'll take him for his word. So how much is the family worth? The mining, the finance, the energy, the arts, the wine, the properties. We must tell you that we don't feel after our little investigation that we could give you even a ballpark figure. The Financial Times doesn't even dare to state what it thinks the family is worth. Back in 2010, the newspaper said the ownership structure is opaque, which makes it hard to estimate the family wealth, although it is one of the richest in the world.